My name is Rachel Long. I am an international relations major within the College of Arts and Sciences, and I study a lot of cultural anthropology looking at the North Africa, which is how I got interested in my topic looking at Morocco and the indigenous people of Morocco. Now, unless you've been speaking to me in the past year and a half, I doubt anybody in this room has ever heard of the Amazigh people. They are also known as the Berber people, which is a little bit more recognizable, although, still kind of unlikely. Berber is considered by many Amazigh as a pejorative term. Comes from the stem of the word barbarian. So most Amazigh people refer to themselves as the term Amazigh or Imazigh for plural. A bit of historical background. Morocco was invaded by Arabs in the 7th century. With this came Islam and the Arabic language, which really played a big role in shaping the culture of the region. Following that, Morocco was under French colonial rule from 1912 to 1956. The French colonial government in Morocco played a huge part in shaping the political culture of the region. They instituted a lot of programs that were intended to divide the indigenous population, the Amazigh, from the Arab population. What they were concerned of is these two populations banding together and forming one big organization to overthrow or at least pose trouble towards the colonial government. So what they did is they fostered resentment and discontent between the two populations. They instituted separate judicial systems, they introduced separate educational systems, and both raised up Berber culture, Amazigh culture, to kind of boost the morale, as well as fostered resentment within the Arab community towards the Amazigh culture. They also simultaneously, which comes as kind of little surprise, is they prioritized French culture above all. They had a highly French education system where they taught, the French curriculum was very similar to the curriculum that was taught in France. It was targeted a lot towards French citizens that were living in Morocco. They encouraged French citizens to move to Morocco and kind of try to spread French culture, values, and language throughout Morocco. It's part of their civilizing mission to bring civilization and higher culture to the area. Following independence, Morocco really tried to push back against this French culture that they saw as invading their country. They instituted these complex policies of Arabization, which include, among other things, importing thousands of teachers from Egypt and Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries in order to create an Arab identity for Morocco. So that Morocco would be less known as a French colony, a French former colony, and more known as an Arab colony, or an Arab country, which is what they based their national identity in. This process, although it was not intended to discriminate against the local Amazigh community, did by just consequence create a marginalized community towards the Amazigh people. They were not recognized as, holders of Moroccan culture. They were overlooked in a lot of the policies, a lot of the language policies and the governmental policies were targeted at making Morocco an Arab country, not recognizing the presence and the importance of Amazigh culture and history within its foundation. The Amazigh populace comprised today officially of about 40% of the Morocco population. However, both activists I spoke to within the Amazigh community, as well as academics and scholars of both Moroccan history and North African history, estimate that this is an underrepresentation of Amazigh population. They would suggest and theorize that the Amazigh population actually comprised of more than 50%, which would make them no longer a minority community. The Amazigh identity movement has both movements in Morocco and Algeria. I specifically am focusing on the Moroccan movement. They're quite different in its scope. The Moroccan movement is more culturally and society-based, where the Algerian movement is more politically based and a bit more violent. It's important, though, to acknowledge that there is a countering movement in Algeria, however. The goal of the Amazigh movement is to incorporate Amazigh identity into the Moroccan national identity, so that when you think Morocco, you no longer think Islam, you no longer think Arabs, but you think this combination, this community, this country with a rich history that includes both Arab history and Amazigh history. The mechanism for doing this, the real way they went about doing this, was they focused on the Tamaziran language, which is the indigenous language of the Amazigh people. They wanted to both get it recognized as an official language, because it has no mention in the Moroccan constitution, and they wanted to get it implemented in school systems. There's a high dropout rate among Amazigh children in schools because a lot of Amazigh people, it's a very rural community. They live primarily in the Atlas Mountains, is a big concentration of the Amazigh community. And when they get to school, they don't know any Arabic, which is the official language of Morocco. So when they get to school, there's a big language barrier, and there's that results in a high dropout rate. They're not allowed to speak Amazigh in court systems, so you run into problems when somebody runs into legal trouble or wants to have their opinion represented in court systems. It was not allowed in the parliament. Nobody was allowed to speak Tamaziran in the parliament until very recently. And there was no representation on media, either print media or TV media. Now this is slowly changing as the populace has kind of shifted its support behind the Amazigh movement. They officially, in 1994 was the beginning of this change in momentum, where they really started to gain more popular support behind the movement. King Hassan II publicly supported efforts to include it in the education system. Historically, he's been not a great friend to the Amazigh community. This was late in his career, where he caved into popular demand and mentioned it in a speech. Soon after that, his son, King Mohammed VI, took over, and he has been, from the people I've spoke to, a strong ally of the Amazigh community. Questions arise regarding whether he is a sincere ally or whether he is just making strategic political decisions in order to prevent the Amazigh movement from becoming violent as it has been in Algeria. So in 2001, he established the Royal Institute for Amazigh Culture, or IRCAM. This organization is viewed with conflicting opinions among Amazigh activists. Some people laud it as a huge success of the movement. Other people really view it as a manifestation of the insincere support and the government's role in maintaining state control over the Amazigh identity, as well as the discussion of Amazigh rights and Amazigh identity. It's largely a toothless organization. It doesn't have much power. Its mandate is to both protect the cultural history of Amazigh, as well as to implement Amazigh in public school systems. It's been almost 20 years, 15 to 20 years, and Amazigh has a very rocky foundation in school systems. There's not enough teachers. The teachers haven't been given enough training. There's really little textbooks. So if you're tracing, what I argue in my paper is that the language, looking at the language, is a strong indicator of successes of this movement. The movement has built its identity around the Amazigh language. That is the mechanism in which they're fighting for political and linguistic recognition. Sorry. Moving on. So if you think about it that way, you can view this as both a success and a downside, that they have maintained organizational and institutional changes in the culture, but they also have run into severe setbacks. Largely the lack of material resources that are available to the community, as well as the pushback from Arab parents who don't want their children learning Amazigh. They feel that it is not useful in the job search, in the real world, essentially. And they feel like that it has really no place in their society. It also, in the past just 5 years, it has finally officially been recognized as an official language. there was a constitutional reform, and they finally adopted Tamazight as an official language, which was a huge success and had high popular opinion among the communities. When you look down into the implementation, there's still ways to go in transforming this, theoretical support of Tamazight recognition and Amazigh rights into implementation among the daily lives and daily rights. But it is a promising start, and the activists I spoke to are optimistic about the path forward. That is my presentation. Thank you all for being here. Are there any questions?
I'm also an IR major, and I study North Africa quite a bit too. And you were correct in your assumption that we had not heard of this whole group. And I was honestly kind of shocked by the number that you presented for such a large portion of the population. Do you have any suggestions for maybe future people in our field and future educators in our field to sort of make this, other than just assign the right reading? But
it's actually a huge ethnic group in North Africa. It stretches from Morocco, Algeria, Botswana. I don't think Burkina Faso has it's a huge ethnic group. The majority of the population is in Algeria and Morocco. They actually have come to recent acclaim after the Kabila, the Berber Spring in Algeria, where they created quite a splash and gained kind of worldwide attention to the movement, which contributed to the increase in motivation among the Moroccan Amazigh community, even though they weren't directly benefited by weren't directly affected by the Berber Spring in Algeria. They kind of gained recognition just, by the external movement right next door. They're also, I don't know if you've heard of the Tuareg, are a group within, they're a subset of Berber culture, which have played a key part in preserving the language and preserving the culture. So they go by several different names, which might contribute a bit to the confusion.
I've heard of some of these other terms you're tying in with them, but I've never heard of them.
Yeah, Amazigh is the larger community, and they have subsets. Any other questions? Nope? Okay.